The Sacramento City Council approved a resolution giving guidance and directions to implement a citywide language access policy and to create a language access manager position. If elected, what specifically will you do to implement these resolution provisions?
This is an issue that I've been talking a lot about, and so as your next mayor, one of the first things I want to do is make sure that when we are conducting city business, that it is accessible to everyone in our community. It is unacceptable that each week we are doing the business of the city and we are not communicating with many of the people who live right here in our community. And so I want to make sure that language access is prioritized and that we have resources available so that we can have a fully inclusive governance. Because we recognize that when we're not speaking to a good portion of our city's population, we're leaving them out of conversations. We're leaving out critical viewpoints, and we're not able to be as effective as we can be. And one of the things I know about this great city is that many of us want to roll up our sleeves and be a part of things, but when we create what I call structural barriers to doing so, we hamper that ability. And so I will be a clear champion of this new position and making sure that we implement the policy, and it's not just something on the books, but that we're actually engaging with our communities.
Thank you. Pass the mic to Kevin, please.
You know, this is a really key issue for me, and I'm proud to have worked with the Hispanic Chamber to fund programs, because so many of our small business owners, food vendors, the taco trucks, the palateros, they don't always understand the rules and regulations. They're just trying to take care of their families. People out there sometimes at grocery stores selling tamales. They like to make sure they understand how you get a city license. So I think we need to break down the barriers, go out to the community. You can't have hours at City Hall 10 to 4, multiple languages, not just in Spanish, but other Southeast Asian languages as well. We have so much opportunity, especially in the food community. We're the culinary capital. And we really have an opportunity and obligation to help our small businesses prosper and grow. So I love this idea, but I want to make sure we get out more in the community to help our entrepreneurs succeed.
Thank you. Steve?
The position has to be fully funded. We need an implementation plan the community agrees to. So working with not only the organizations hosting tonight, the Hispanic Chamber, want to make sure that that language is not just accessible as a form of what government's going to do, but it becomes the key to engaging with government to successfully lead your life. Again, back to raising your family, making sure that when we provide services, they're culturally competent, accessible, but you want to open a business, that the person who picks up the phone in economic development can be part of your journey in a meaningful way. That is what our city should be doing, and that is what I pledge to do as your mayor.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. Language access is critical. We're one of the most diverse metropolitan areas and cities in the entire country. And yet, too many people who actually live in our city do not actually have true access to city services because of language barriers. And my wife is an immigrant business owner. Fortunately, less of a language issue there, but we know that immigrant businesses, when we look, think about going up and down Stockton and Franklin Boulevard, so forth, you see all these amazing businesses. And yet, there are so many rules that are difficult to understand. One of the things I think this highlights, though, as you mentioned, the city passed this. It's follow through and implementation. And I think one of the frustrations I hear from people here in the city of Sacramento is that we have a lot of announcements of things that we said we're going to do, and we don't follow through. And as mayor, I pledge to you that I am going to work to be sure we follow through. We have a lot of great ideas. It's not a lack of ideas, it's the follow through. And that's what we need in City Hall.
Thank you. And Jose?
This nation is a melting pot of different cultures, and we must use that to our strength and our abilities. If we're not having an open dialogue during our conversation, we're making city decisions for the well-being of the people in the community, then we're not doing our job as leaders because we're not including everybody. One of the problems that I had when I was opening my business is that there are resources out there, limited resources, to try to tell you how to open your own business, but there's no actual step-by-step process if you have questions. No one you can turn to. Those are some of the problems. A lot of people they come here because they want that dream to build something. But then when they get here, they realize that the government only wants your money and your taxes. And then we start to lose, our confidence in our own government, and we have distrust. We have issues with that. So one thing that I want to bring back is to reassure you that we are here to work for you and give you every tool necessary to make that American dream come true. And we ensure that everyone here feels included and has an opportunity to speak to somebody who is knowledgeable enough to give them the resources necessary to point them in the right direction to be successful.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Kevin McCarty. Do you believe the City of Sacramento provides access to programs, services, grant funding, and Measure U funds based on Latino city demographics? And what will you do to ensure arts grants for Sacramento City artists, museums, festivals, and other programs are equitably distributed and used properly?
Absolutely not. I was a city council member and I saw we rewarded our arts programs, granted the important ones, the ballet, the symphony, the Crocker, the ones that have been the staples. But they don't represent our diverse communities. As Dr. Pan said, we're the most, not diverse, integrated city in America. And that's way more important, that we're all one. And so one highlight I saw during the pandemic, after that summer of George Floyd and the racial recognizing our issues, the city said, you know what, we need to tap in and make sure we award to our diverse arts groups. It was $5,000, $10,000. But the first important thing was noted there is that they've been lacking for so long. So as mayor, I will continue this and make sure that we focus on all of our communities, especially focusing the Latino art community and diversity.
Thank you. Steve.
I lived for 16 years in Alkali Flat, the home of the Royal Chicano Air Force, a block from where La Raza Galleria Posada started. And when I came to Sacramento, the first place I went was the Galleria in the house that Joe Cerna helped it get. So I've always tried to support. When I got elected to council, Kevin's right. We weren't doing it the same. We weren't doing it right. We had this City County Arts Commission. I dismantled it and created a Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy Commission that every council member got an appointment. So we'd have representation. And then my appointee was struggling to make sure that my vision for an equitable arts community was being implemented. So I pulled up to council an equity policy. So every decision was made through the lens of, are we helping people? When the Latino Center wanted to start the Dia de los Muertos, I was partner to them to start that in Midtown, and that's grown every year. I'm so proud of it. Those are examples, but my work is not done.
Thank you. Richard?
I think as my friend Kevin said, and also Stephen, I'm looking forward to the other responses as well. We have still a long way to go to be sure that everyone has equal opportunity here in Sacramento and the state of California. We are a progressive state, we're a progressive city, but we have not done enough. Frankly, that's as a state legislator, one of the things I fought for is a racial equity commission, state racial equity commission. In fact, they're about to launch this year. I actually got a lot of resistance from it because everyone likes to talk about it, but I wanted to be sure that the commission actually could hold people accountable. And it's not just for the state government, it's actually going to also support local governments as well. There's a lot we need to do to undo, unfortunately, a fairly long history of disparities, and whether it's arts or other types of things. And so I'm going to be sure that we follow through and work to be sure that we create equal opportunity for everyone here in the city of Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose?
The answer to this question is no. We're not represented equally. One of the big problems is our own problem. We don't vote. Okay, we have, for some reason, we make up, again, 30% of the population in the state of California, and less than 25% is registered to vote. That's the problem that we create for ourselves, unfortunately. We're underrepresented in the city halls and the state legislation halls. If we had more representation, we'd have a stronger voice, and we can get those resources that we need for our community to build a better future. That's the problem, and I encourage everyone here today to go and vote and tell your neighbor to register to vote. That's the first thing we can do to change that. Okay? And if you want to see change, you have to make sure that you're voting for the candidate that's going to represent you and fight for you every single day. If you want to have the music festivals, if you want to have the museums, you have to have representation, and the only way to have representation is to vote, because that is your voice. That is a democratic promise, and we have to make sure that we fulfill that and make sure that every generation after us continues to thrive.
Thank you. Flo?
Of course, right? Like, we don't even need to go much further into this question because we absolutely have not. Do you feel like you've been adequately invested in? I don't. I live here, you live here. We don't need to go into, of course we have not. I've served on, and I know the myriad of ways that we have not been served. I started my city service on active transportation. We're not serving our Latino community there. I then moved to the Climate Commission. We're not serving our Latino community there. And then I was the 4-term chair of the Measure U Committee, which was supposed to spend the money, again, on inclusive economic development, the arts community, and making sure that we had housing. And we didn't. The city failed to do that. So the challenge here is not about not having resources. The challenge here is about actually setting goals and saying this is what we're going to do and honoring those goals. Because when Measure U was put on the ballot, you were lied to. You were told the money was going to be spent on those 3 things, and it was not. And so as your next mayor, what I'm promising you is that I'm going to champion spending money as it's supposed to be and making sure that your voices are included and you are well represented.
Thank you. We now go to the next question on some economic development, and that question will first be directed to Steve Hansen. How have you specifically engaged the Latino small businesses, and what will you do to ensure they remain open and thrive in our region? And how will you ensure that the Latino small business community has a seat at the table in regional economic development discussions?
Well, tonight is a good start at making sure that everyone has a seat at the table about what the next mayor is going to do. And the number of people here sent a very strong message. When we looked to bring back a restaurant at Chavez Plaza, George Eakes, his wife had died. His cook had moved to Mayawell, and his cook actually was killed on Freeport Boulevard biking home one night. You probably remember that, Jorge. Ernesto Delgado came to me and said he had a beautiful vision about the harvest and celebrating the history of our farm workers. City Economic Development staff didn't see his vision, but I did. They wanted somebody else who didn't match the history and opportunity that Chavez Plaza gave us. So I fought, and we made sure that Ernesto could open La Cosecha. La Cosecha is a bright light in a very difficult place. And Ernesto is an example of how I partner with people to make sure they can succeed for all of us.
Thank you. Richard.
We need to immigrant businesses oftentimes struggle because it's hard to understand, make things complicated for them. Right? We talked about language access. We have somewhat challenging rules. And what's going to be really important to be able to help immigrants businesses succeed, and Latino businesses succeed, and other small businesses succeed, is to be sure that in the city of Sacramento, we have leadership that tells our staff, you need to be helpful. We need to be helpful. We need help people get their businesses started. We do need language access. We also need people who can be sure they help support. We also need to be sure we invest in different neighborhoods. That's why I'm proud to have actually got state funding to help support Franklin Boulevard with the neighborhood center here. And then of course went and met with small business owners to talk about what are the things that we can do to help them, how to help you succeed. And certainly as a small business owner myself, I certainly, well, thank you.
Thank you. Jose.
Again, I'm actively engaged in this entrepreneurship community. I've assisted multiple individuals, Latinas and Latinos, open their own businesses, from gyms to clothing brands to jewelry to online Amazon stores. You know, I've been actively engaged in trying to help our community create that American dream because I believe in it. It's what I stand for, it's what I fight for, and I believe in. One of the things that affects us the most, though, is ensuring that we have a round table of communication where we can have an open dialect of what's going on and where is our money going. If the city is allocating X amount of funds to a certain project or community or for grants for small businesses, is that money actually going to that small business owner? Those are the conversations we need to have with the community leadership. And I encourage our community leaders to get together and to get with me and let's have a conversation about this every single month to ensure that we're doing everything we can to get that money, your taxpayer money, back to you. And let's open up more businesses. Let's create more jobs. But it's ensuring that we have accountability all across the table.
Thank you. Flo.
So the job of the city is to make things easier. And so I don't always think that the city's role is to own this, but it should be a key partner. And so one of the things that the city can do to be a key partner is to make sure that we're using our resources to help support small businesses, that we're supporting the organizations within the community that are supporting small businesses. So that means making funding available for early career, entrepreneurs to be able to start their businesses, making opportunities available. We just created an entire convention center. What would it look like if every time there was a convention coming to town, we made sure that some of our small businesses were directed for what you can do after the conference is over, that we had a thriving nightlife? What would it look like if we actually invested in making sure that we were a strong partner with the existing entities and organizations? And what would it look like if we streamlined so we didn't take all of your money up front, but we were still able to cover the costs of doing business here in really creative ways? So that's what we can do for small businesses right here in Sacramento.